So as Ashley mentioned, I am board certified as a psychodramatist, both a practitioner and a trainer. And we were actually talking in the other room a few minutes ago that it only took me 10 years to get that, so with all due respect to the doctoral candidates in the room, the letters PhD aren't behind my name, but it cost me a lot of money and a lot of years of training. And there's good reasons for that. For those of you who've done psychodrama before, you know that we can dive deep, and one of the important things is to know how to get people back out so that no harm is done. That is our first ethical rule. So before I forget, and thank you for the reminder, if you haven't turned your phone off yet, if you could, I'd really appreciate it. So as Ashley mentioned, we are going to be working experientially, and this is going to be very interesting to try to do because I'm going to get you all up and moving, which is going to be kind of challenging in a room this size. But what I would ask you to do is to put down your stuff, stand up, and we're going to start with a continuum, and I guess we'll do it diagonally here. If anybody needs another chair, I have it. There's a couple of them stacked here, so we'll just leave them stacked. Feel free to grab one. So this end of the spectrum would represent, I use a lot of body-based practices in the work that I'm doing, all the way down to where Bentley's standing. I don't use any body-based work in my work. Okay, so find a spot on the continuum as best you can. It's going to be, we're obviously going to have to.
Can you define body-based work?
However you define it, okay? I'm purposely making it vague because I can't possibly capture every possible body-based kind of therapy. So I want to invite whatever there is in the room in that respect too. But it's like I grew up in New York, and they say we go up when it comes to buildings. Here in California, we go out, right? Because we have the space. So we're going to do that with this continuum. Feel free to go out. So find the spot on the continuum that corresponds to your response to that question. I use a lot of body-based work in my practice. I use none whatsoever. Yeah, you can do wherever you want. Find a spot, folks. Then I'll give you an instruction. So find a spot. All the way over here.
I know we're all
Then what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to ask you to turn to somebody standing near you, preferably somebody you don't really know very well, you don't work with, and share with them about why you placed yourself where you are. Take a couple of minutes to do that. Attention, because of course I forgot my Tibetan singing bowl. So let's hear from some folks at this end. Anybody, jump in. Share with us why you're standing down at that end.
we were trying to decide if we understood correctly, but for me, because I work with kids, I took it more as movement. So I'm always moving, doing all kinds of different things from psychodrama to
all kinds of things, play therapy.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Who else? Go ahead.
Well, I do, we were just chatting, and because I do equine-assisted psychotherapy, that's definitely a physical activity.
Yep.
It's not riding, but the horses are out in the arena moving around.
Right.
Also, art is physical, drumming, mind-body work, even that.
Okay.
That's why I placed
the right side of the brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked about using mindfulness and breath work to center themselves and get them present in the session. And so grounding themselves and getting them focused on the moment and being really connected.
Okay, cool.
Start out.
Thank you. Somebody in the middle here. Go ahead.
Okay. The reason why I'm at the back is, first of all, I used to be an elementary school teacher, and all my kids used to go to the back, so I guess I'm a kid at home. But the other part is that when I do my nutrition therapy, I'm very, very aware that everybody's got their own comfort zone. And I have to focus where they feel comfortable. And when I do my approach in nutrition, I do the step approach. Because there's so many changes that people have to make that they feel totally overwhelmed. So if I do it at their comfort zone, then they're going to get better results.
Okay.
So that's why I'm at the back.
Anybody else in the middle here?
Oh, I meant the middle because it's in a non-committal, you can do both.
The truth comes out.
Yeah, that's pretty much part of it, but the other part is, I don't do a whole lot of physical stuff, but I respond to the physical of the client a whole lot. So that's where I was physical.
Okay, cool. Anybody else in the middle here?
Guided meditation.
Progressive muscle relaxation.
Body cues when dealing with symptoms.
Body cues when dealing with symptoms. Okay, somebody all the way at this end. Anyone?
I personally, in my work, I'm outreach and admissions, so I don't do any body-based work with, I'm really dealing with families who are looking for placement. But once they're in our program, we do things, we have a mindfulness class, a wellness class, yoga, meditation, things like that.
Okay, cool. Anybody else at this end? I think you're somewhere over in Utah. Over there.
Well, I just keep people getting out of the way.
I see, okay.
We're in Wyoming.
In Wyoming, with the horses. Good. Okay, anybody feel a burning desire to chime in on this in any way? Okay, so here's what we're going to do next.
That's why you took the middle.
Step off this line and we're going to do what's called a locogram, meaning location.
I'm gonna go high.
So y'all can kind of make a circle of sort of. I know it's tough. So don't sit down yet. Don't sit down. So this spot represents. I have a lot of good tools at my disposal to help clients who are struggling with fear and/or dissociation. I have some tools at my disposal, but I could use a few more. I feel like I don't have a lot at all, and then this would be other. Now, if you go to the other spot, as I like to say when I work with adolescents, this is not the whatever spot. When you go to other, you have to be able to define what other is for you, okay? So I have a lot of tools at my disposal for dealing with clients in fear or dissociation. That can include panic attacks, for example. I have some, but I sure could use some more. I really don't have a lot of them. And then other. So go to the spot that's right for you. And again, share with somebody standing near you about why you're standing where you're standing. Take a couple of minutes.
Sorry for
And let's hear from one of our outliers over there. Gentlemen, so notice it's all men over there in the corner. Let's hear from one of our outliers over there about why you're standing in the wings.
What do you mean by that?
Good, guys. Nice try.
Okay.
Somebody? Why are you standing? Oh, that was nice. Point to That's volunteer. You're the same thing when you introduce yourself. Go ahead.
The only thing, the reason why I'm standing here is because I only heard fear, and that was the only thing.
And I'm getting as far away from it as I can.
Exactly.
There you go. Right. So the comment I was making when I went over there and the guys were like, oh, we all work in marketing. I thought you've never talked to a client or a family member or a fellow staff member who's been in panic or afraid. Maybe, maybe not. So, but thanks for your honesty, appreciate it. And how about here in the, I have lots of tools. Anything either of you wants to share?
Well, I think since I've been in practice for dog years, and I've worked with I've had a specialty in dissociative disorders in the past. If I can't work with panic and fear by this time, I don't deserve to be here.
Okay, well said. Thank you. Somebody in the, I have some tools, but I could sure use some more. Jump in.
Marie, okay. I find hypnotherapy really good with panic, and depends on the client. Guided meditation, transcendental meditation. Those are probably my most common tools. Inner child work, psychodrama. So,
Okay.
but I can always use more.
Can't we all? Anybody else?
Oh, your tools.
Go ahead.
The more that I know, the more that I know how much I can know.
Right. The more that I know, the more that I know what I don't know, or I know that I don't know. Yes. Yes. Or as I like to say, I didn't know I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's another one of my favorites. Anybody else in the middle here?
I just fall back on client-centered counseling, client-centered Rogerian counseling technique. I find really that calms them down and makes them heard and makes them feel validated. And psychoeducational groups, basically. I feel that gives them some structure, but I would definitely like a lot more skills.
Okay, cool. And how about somebody in me? Not a lot, so
All the
not so
same,
much.
it's the same answers as we have over here.
Okay.
Right, it is. We need more.
More.
There's always more. There's
Yeah.
always something better, newer, different.
Or something old and standard that I haven't learned yet. That's something else that certainly jumps in for me sometimes. Go ahead. You started.
I kind of came in late because I go to the restroom, so I apologize. It's part of my anxiety that's going on for me.
Fear is
today.
based in the bladder as far as Chinese medicine is
Yes,
concerned.
it is.
It is. The bladder and the kidneys, we're going to talk about that.
Yes, it is, it definitely is. I know for me, this is the other category. Am I in the right category? So-
You're in the other.
So, okay,
Yeah.
the other. So for me, it's been mind, body, and spirit, and trying to find the whole of what's missing and what's causing the anxiety for me. And sometimes I can find it. For me, it's going to my therapist and being real, and almost doing Jungian therapy, where I'm trading places, the seats.
It's actually
Thank you.
role reversal and it's a
Role
psychodrama
reversal.
technique.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And knowledge is power for me. So when I'm with someone and I'm with my therapist and she has more knowledge than I do in a certain matter and she's able to share with me some of that, I always know that for me it makes me feel empowered, because my anxiety causes my stress, and I have had physical ailments going on for me, like pull-ups in my lower and upper intestinal, and yesterday I got them removed and they were 1 and 2 cancer that hadn't spread. So, for me, it's just kind of getting back to grounding myself again and trying to figure that out on how to do that. So that's the other stuff. But for me, mostly knowledge and power and mind, body, and spirit, trying to get my whole self back. I feel planted.
Cool, thank you.
All
So why don't we have you all sit? Because I'm afraid we're going to run out of time in terms of the educational piece.
Oh, sit in our chair. Oh, I thought you meant sit. I was stressing. I was like, please. It's on there.
If you like.
About a week ago.
You're welcome to sit on the floor if you prefer. Okay. So, I do want to talk about this from the perspective of eating disorders. Certainly, whether it's anorexia, bulimia, exercise bulimia, whatever it is, for a lot of eating disorder clients, myself included, I've had one since I was 7. There's something very grounding about binging. It's a way to get in my body when I was feeling dissociated. And whether I'm starving myself or overeating, there's a whole piece there about being in the body versus not. And most eating disorder folks I know, at the core, don't want to be in the bodies. It's just that simple. And that's certainly true for addicts and alcoholics and workaholics and sex addicts and et cetera. We could go to that sort of more broad spectrum when it comes to it. So I'm a big believer in following what's going on in the body in any kind of therapeutic process. Because I have yet to meet an eating disorder client who wasn't also a trauma survivor of some kind. And I may make somebody's analytic head explode when I say this, and I apologize in advance, but I don't think you can heal trauma in somebody's head. You've got to bring in the somatic piece, because trauma happens in the body, and it has to be healed in the body. So when I look at fear and dissociation, which is a huge issue with eating disorder clients, I want to talk a little bit about some of the specific techniques that I can offer you that you can use with clients. And I am going to focus specifically on body-based techniques. So somebody mentioned, actually a couple of you mentioned in that last question, the whole idea of having information, whether it's psychoeducation, whether it's knowledge is power. And if we look at the trauma recovery process, or that journey, we really are talking about what's called pendulation, or for, we can talk about the therapeutic window or the window of tolerance, where on one end we have cognition, and on the other end we have affect. Right? So if I'm all the way at this end, I'm completely flooded in my feelings, my prefrontal cortex has gone offline, I can't think. Right? If I'm all the way on this end, I'm completely in my head and I'm disconnected from the neck down. So I'm not tuned into my body at all. And most people I know who are not in recovery for an eating disorder either live in one of these two places or they bounce back and forth. Sometimes I'm completely flooded, and then sometimes I can intellectually tell you about how I was raped. That's not my story, thank God, and I can report it like a news reporter, and I'm not here. And I'm sure many of you who are working with traumatized and eating disorder clients have had that experience with both. So when we look at the window of tolerance, or the therapeutic window, as I was first taught it was called, it's really this middle ground in between. And in this place, I've got an integration of both my cognitive and my affective and my somatic, somal meaning body, right? So in this place, I'm having the feelings and I'm integrating it cognitively. There's I don't think it was Judith Herman. I have to track it down and see who said this, but early on in my training, I learned that recovery from trauma is a three-part process. I have to tell my story. I have to tell my story with feeling, and then I have to make meaning out of it. And for me, the making meaning out of it, there's got to be a spiritual component for that. That's my own personal belief. I'm happy if anybody wants to disagree with me. I'm right, but no. I'm kidding. I mentioned I was raised by a lawyer. So what I want to address is that it's really important to allow people to stay with their defenses. It's not my job to take away those defenses. It's my job to make it safe enough for them to drop them down a little bit at a time. So if somebody goes and stays in this place for a while, I need to honor them in this place. But as a body-based practitioner, what I'm trying to do a little bit at a time is help them move in this direction. If somebody's all the way down here and flooded and in a panic or completely dissociated, wherever they are on the dissociative continuum, for me it's about, and in the trauma recovery process, it's about helping them bring some of that cognitive integration. If somebody's in this place, you can't do any cognitive integration until you get them back in their body. It's that simple. And a lot of times, my experience has been when I've been training people or teaching people, they want to go straight with the client over to education. And the client isn't here. They're not in their prefrontal cortex. They can't integrate information. They're completely in their reptilian and limbic part of their brain. And they're not going to take any of it in. So I can be feeding you all kinds of information, but it's not being integrated, right? So in terms of keeping people in this place, by the same token, if I'm trying to offer people psychoed, right? And, no, I did that backwards.
No, that's right. If you're trying to give them psychoed, but they're in the limbic.
They're in the limbic.
They're not going to assimilate.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I was just saying. I'm trying to think the reverse. I'm going to let that go. Because clearly I'm too limbic right now to come up. It's actually a running joke in some of my psychodrama training groups when we're kind of going to a teaching piece a while after we've done a piece of psychodrama, and somebody will say, I'm too limbic to answer that question right now. You can't be that cognitive. So let me talk about flooding, dissociation, and panic. As I said, in Chinese medicine, I didn't mention, I'm also a trainer of a method called psychodramatic bodywork, which is a way of taking emotional release work and dropping it into the context of a psychodramatic enactment. So it's based on Chinese medicine in terms of the meridians, which are little rivers of energy that run through our body. If you've ever had acupuncture, that's what they're working on. They're working on opening up those meridians. If you've ever had shiatsu, that's what they're working on. So it's about helping people emotionally discharge the energy that got stored when the trauma occurred. Because for all of us, we either fight, flight, or freeze, and a lot of stuff gets frozen in our body, right? and then physically shows up years later for a lot of people. So when somebody is in that frozen place, that dissociated place, and we're trying to get them back into the body, it helps to attend to bladder and kidney meridians. Now, I'm not going to make you crazy by showing you where those meridians are. I didn't bring my meridian chart, but I can say a few things about dealing with the bladder and the kidneys. Your kidneys live right underneath your ribs here, right in the back. But in Chinese medicine, this whole lower part of your back is considered to be what's called a kidney reflex area. So if you have a client who's in a panic and they are, I always negotiate this in advance. I have a safe touch contract that I do with people because I know for some people it's very controversial to put your hands on people. You know, knock wood, I haven't had a problem. But it can be really helpful for people to have a hand on their lower back to help ground them. The other thing, I'm going to get really specific here, my cute little clock socks. There's a kidney point right at the bottom of the foot, kidney 1. We've had acupuncture or shiatsu. That's why when somebody's in a panic, they need their feet flat on the ground. When somebody goes into fear, notice this next time with a client if you've never noticed it before, their feet start to come up off the ground, right? Their heels come up. A lot of times their toes and their fingers will start to curl in. Some of that is the oxygen deprivation because they're starting to hyperventilate. That's another key piece of it. And in terms of the bladder, I'm going to invite you to find yours. It lives right above your pubic bone. It's not your belly button, which is up here. It's right above your genitals up here. So find your own bladder for a moment. Put your feet flat on the ground and find it. If you have to pee and you press, it'll hurt, right? But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll teach clients you can put your hand on your own bladder, bless you, to calm yourself down. You can put one hand on their heart and one hand on their bladder, put your feet flat on the ground, and breathe. Breathing is key. The other thing I will say about when people go into panic and they start to hyperventilate, it's because they're not exhaling, right? They don't think they have enough air, so what do? And there's no more room, right? They need to blow out. And the term that I often use with them is we're going to blow out the birthday candles. Because everybody knows how to do that, right? It's a good, strong, forceful breath. And then I'm helping them get back into a rhythm of breathing. I'll be breathing with them again. Sometimes I've literally had to put my hands on somebody to push down right in the diaphragm area to get the air to come out if they're that frozen in their panic. Keeping their eyes open is key. When people go into fear, they tend to close their eyes or their eyes glaze over. Often if they close their eyes, they're going into the visual scene of what it is they're frightened about, or they're going into their flashback, and they get stuck there. If you can keep their eyes open and focused. The other important thing for you to know, if you don't already know this, is the way the bladder and kidney meridians, and again, you don't have to learn the meridians, but the bladder and kidney meridians run right around the ears, on either side of the ears. So when people go into panic or dissociation, they can't hear you. So you have to speak loudly to them. I'm not saying scream at them, but speak loudly to them. It will sound like a whisper to them, I swear to you. But you have to speak loudly. Use their name a lot. Look in their eyes. You might have to keep telling them to open their eyes, to keep looking at you. The other thing I'm a big fan of, and mind you, I'm a psychodramatist, is inviting them to make sound. Fear is a high-pitched sound, right? We pay very good money in our culture to go to a movie where we get to be scared for about 30 seconds and go, ah! You know, when the guy jumps out, we're all sitting there going, don't open that door! And then the guy jumps out and everybody panics. Or we pay good money to go to Disney and get on a couple of rides in the course of the day and scream. Think about coming down a roller coaster. It's not a woo kind of scream. It's a ah! Right? It's a fear-based scream. So I've been trained to help people make sound and move it out of their bodies, because for so many of us, when the trauma happened, we held our breath and we didn't make a sound. Right? There's the freeze piece. Maybe if I'm quiet, nobody will notice and I won't get hurt. Right? So I'm going to invite all of you to take a deep breath in and out. There's a lot of you who stopped breathing already. Right? Did you notice that? Did anybody notice that themselves, that you stopped breathing? Yeah. Yawning, that's another sign of fear. So let me.
And so your reflexes to breathe.
Exactly, exactly. And that's the other thing I want to say about hyperventilation. More than once I've had a client pass out because they're hyperventilating so intensely. The body, it's brilliant, right? They pass out and then the body says, oh, finally I can breathe again, right? So if you have a client pass out, don't panic. And that's key. Fear is contagious. That's why people get trampled in movie theaters, because one person panics and then it spreads like wildfire around the room. So if everybody, or all you need is one person in the room to say, everybody stop. Somebody be loud and clear and in charge. And say, everybody stop. You know, the exits are there and there. We're all going to file out calmly and everybody's going to get out of the building. People need reassurance and they need somebody to be in charge. And I got to tell you right now, you know more about fear than about 90% of the population. Questions, comments so far? I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you. But you have to tend to that when one client goes into a panic in group, everybody else in the group is going to be picking up on that fear. So I have to speak loudly not only to that client, but to everybody in the room and be making eye contact, reassuring them. And again, the way I've been trained, and I'm a psychodramatist, physically supporting each other as we're doing that. A lot of times people are more willing to let clients support each other than the therapist touching them. Again, I know you got to go with the culture of the treatment center you're working in or whatever practice you're in. So the other thing I want to teach you is something called the triple warmer meridian. I'm going to take off my jacket for this. The triple warmer in Chinese medicine, this part of our body is the warmest part, right? As opposed to the extremities, which tend to get colder. So in Chinese medicine, it can be called triple warmer, triple burner, triple heater. Doesn't matter. Those three terms are used interchangeably. It basically corresponds to the 3 chakra centers here in the middle of the body. And the triple warmer meridian is about being present in the body versus being dissociated. So it basically, and it's on either side, this is the easiest access. It starts up in the middle of your shoulder, runs down the outside, right? And again, it's all about intention. You don't have to be an acupuncturist to do this right. Right? Runs down the outside of the shoulder to the elbow, and then comes all the way down the arm to the ring finger. If you have a client who tends to dissociate, many times when I've worked with clients, I mean, I know for myself as a recovering dissociator, I knew when I was leaving. I got to the point where I knew when I was checking out. And I could say, okay, I'm leaving. Somebody come work my triple warmer. And it helps you get back in your body. So go ahead and find it on yourself. Either arm is fine. It doesn't matter. If you palpate it, don't be afraid to really palpate it, the way a massage therapist might. And if it's tender, you might be dealing with a little bit of anxiety or fear in your life these days. The thing I like about knowing that it goes all the way down to the ring finger is that you can just play with your ring finger. And that'll help you come back into your body. This is a tool that I teach clients all the time. I tell them, if you are sitting in a business meeting and somebody asks you a question you don't know the answer to and you get really scared, just sit and play with your ring finger. Keep your feet flat on the ground. Remember to keep breathing. And before you know it, they're feeling calmer. Or you can sit in a business meeting with your hands in your lap. Everybody will think you just have your hands in your lap and you're comforting your own bladder. Right? I'm not a big fan of flying. I'm especially not a big fan of turbulence when I fly. So a lot of times what I end up doing, if we're in bad turbulence, is I put my feet flat on the ground because I'm frightened. I put my feet flat on the ground, I put one hand on my bladder, and I put the other hand on my heart, and I just breathe and breathe and breathe. You'd be amazed how quickly it can calm you down. Right? So I'm actually going to do that exercise with you for a moment. But before we do that, I would invite you to find somebody else's triple warmer. Turn to somebody sitting near you. Find somebody else's triple warmer.
You know where mine is? Where it's kind of yeah, you're going to do that right now. There you go. So you go like this. Yeah, you gotta get
I was very excited. The chiropractor is on the street. That's because the chiropractor doctor was here. On your body. So it's just good. It's like adjustment.
the structure of anatomy, you probably see it
Okay. Questions or comments about that?
Structure kind of the muscles, right? Like it kind of goes around and then
Yeah, kind of.
like it feels like it's kind of contact around.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I said, the real key piece is that it's about intention. You know, because if you've ever looked at a meridian chart, it's like, woo, you know, there's just
Quite big.
It's really scary for me when I look. I'm trying to track. Is that the heart? Is that the card constrictor? And where's the book? You know. And it's about intention. If my intention is to help somebody stay in their body by working their triple wanding meridian, then that's what I'm doing. And if the client's intention is to, or if my intention when I'm sitting in a stressful situation, if my intention is to play, people will just say I'm playing with my fingers, right? A lot of people have a quote unquote nervous habit of playing with their fingers. Well, sometimes, yeah. And every finger has different meridians in it, right? So I'm always fascinated by which one they're playing with. It can tell you a lot, absolutely.
I did that automatically, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It feels really good.
It feels really good. Well, some people go and they get reflexology in their feet, right? And I don't know about you, but when I get reflexology, sometimes it hurts like heck.
Oh, I don't go for, the pain.
Oh, it can be really painful. You know, there's particular meridians that are more agitated than others for me. The other thing, there were a couple other things I wanted to say. Oh, I cannot stress enough that if I'm working with people who are in a lot of fear, that because it's contagious, it can potentially trigger my own unresolved fear. And obviously, if I'm working with somebody who's in a panic attack, if I'm the clinician in charge, I have to bracket my own feelings about that. Right? But please don't forget to go somewhere safe and unbracket, because a lot of us don't. And we hold it, and we hold it, and we hold it, and then we burn out. Or we end up having a medical procedure, as the case may be. So when we look at the bladder and the kidneys and fear, things like bladder infections or kidney infections, things like yeast infections, things like earaches, right? It goes through the ears. What else? Sleep disorders are key when it comes to unexpressed fear. People either have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or they wake up with nightmares or night terrors. Any kind of so-called first and second chakra issues are often connected to that. First chakra is all about being in the world, being safe, being supported in the world, kind of like the trust versus mistrust that Erickson talked about. Second chakra has a lot to do with our physical creativity, but it also has to do with our sexuality. So a lot of times sexual disorders are connected to fear as well. All the guys in the room just went, oh, shoot. Teasing. Some of the women probably do too. So I really have to pay attention to my own fear, and I have to find somewhere to go and bracket and release it for myself. What else do I want to say about this? Let me do a very brief exercise with you. I'm going to teach you what we call the open-faced heart sandwich, where put your stuff on the ground, put your feet flat on the ground, one hand on your bladder, whichever one feels comfortable, and the other hand on your heart. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and just breathe all the way down into your feet, and I'm going to time you for 2 minutes. So just take a moment and check in with your body as you start. Just notice any tension or tightness that you might be feeling. If you don't feel safe to keep your eyes closed, you can glance down or stare at something, okay? So I'm just going to time you for 2 minutes. Slowly and gently remove your hand. Just take a body scan for a moment before you open your eyes. And again, turn to somebody sitting next to you and just share with them about what that might have been like for you. Take a minute to do that.
Doing that. So it was good relaxing. Yeah, I
Inhale the same way, exhale the same way. I'm trying to force
Okay, so let's hear from a few folks. Anything anybody wants to share? It's amazing what can happen in 2 minutes, isn't it? Right? Anybody? Anybody want to share?
Extreme relaxation.
Extreme relaxation. Not uncommon. If I'm having trouble falling asleep, I will often do that when I'm laying in bed and I'm out. It's amazing how quickly I can go to sleep when that happens. So yeah, it can really help.
I'm just still sleepy, like the front, like just like I just woke up, like I feel.
Right now you're feeling a little sleepy?
Just after that calming.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do want to comment on that, and I'm not saying this is true for you, because I'm noticing some yawning, a couple people did that. If we look at the continuum of fear, just to give, a lot of times there are really subtle signs that people miss in terms of what's going on. So at one end of the continuum, falling asleep can sometimes be a sign of fear. I was in a psychodrama training group in New York for years, and one of my fellow group members had a very, very intense trauma history, and she would fall asleep in group almost every week. Because when somebody started talking about their own history or there was a psychodrama being enacted, it was, it was like the fuse needed to trip, and she would, and eventually she'd come out of it, she'd wake up. Another sign of it is making inappropriate jokes, right? And another sign is when people start talking really fast, and then I went here, and then I did this, and did you know that I did it? Right, that's a really commonly missed sign of fear. So sometimes it's that I'm rushed, but sometimes, I know for me, sometimes when I'm speaking too quickly, there's so much I want to say, and I'm afraid you're not going to pay attention long enough, so let me just get it all out. I grew up in a family of 7 children, and there just was not a lot of time. So, but that's a sign. Another one is when we're in fear, we naturally want to shake. For those of you who are familiar with Peter Levine's book, Waking the Tiger, he talks about how animals in nature, after they've had a trauma, like after a gazelle, for example, has been being pursued, and a gazelle gets away, they've watched animals that once they've gotten away and they're running, their bodies shake. They shake off the trauma, and they let it go, right? So the body naturally wants to shake. So a lot of times what will happen with clients when they're sitting, I see this with guys all the time, I'll be sitting in group, and the legs are going like this. Or women will sit and do this. Right?
What about anxiety?
Anxiety is fear. That's what it is. It's on the fear continuum. So we come up with all these really interesting terms to try to avoid saying the word fear, like anxious. You know, you're on the fear continuum, right? But the body naturally wants to shake. If you notice somebody's voice start to go up in pitch, they're moving into fear. For those of you who are dealing with people who often can go into rage, that's a clear sign. Because rage is what happens when anger and fear come together. So a lot of times people will start out angry and they feel like I'm not being heard or I'm not getting what I want. What it says at the end of the 7th step that I'm afraid that what I have is going to be taken away from me and I'm afraid that what I demand I'm not going to get, right? So you'll notice that the pitch of the voice will start to go up and the feet will start to come off the ground and the legs may start going and the glazed look may come over somebody's eyes. Clearly,
I teach the anger management group, and so I see they get off their chair and they start lifting.
Right.
And they always say that what's the #1 cause of anger? I'm disrespected.
Particularly with men.
Especially, which usually the men
Yeah.
used to only be.
And in situations, funny, I was sharing this with somebody just yesterday, and in situations like that, I have to be in charge. You know, I remember, God help me, my first job at graduate school, I was working with a bunch of parolees, inner city, New York City, in the hood. You know, I'm this little white girl, like, okay, they're all, you know, at least a foot taller than me. They've all just gotten out of prison. They're all buff. And one of the first groups I ran, 2 of the guys on opposite sides of the room, the disrespect thing happened. They both stood up and started going for each other. And I walked right in the middle and I said, you, sit down! And I looked over, you, get your seat! And they both were like, yeah. Right? Because I could feel in that split second, everybody in the room was ready. Because this is what these guys had done. Now, of course, after that, I went into my office and went to my supervisor. I was terrified. But I knew if I didn't set the tone in that moment, I was never going to be respected in that group again. And those guys never did that, ever again. They might have gotten really agitated, but they were willing to take direction. But all it took was standing up and taking charge, because somebody had to do it. And I was the one who was being paid to be in charge, so I better be doing it, right? Have any of you ever had experiences like that? Yeah. Yeah. But I had to go and then, you know, unbrack it. You know, I had to do a big old fear release in my boss's office, screaming at the top of my lungs about how terrified I was, because it was scary. I'd never been in a situation like that. I mean, I was raised in a Wonder Bread white town on Long Island, and here I am in the inner city. Like, woo, what am I doing here, right? So, what else did I want to say about this? Do I have any questions so far? Any comments? Is this new information for a lot of you? Yeah, yeah. One of the things that's been really important for me, I was sharing this, I think it was with you, Ellen, or somebody else before. No, I was sharing it with Clay. It's one of the Clay, program directors. That was
Operations manager.
Operations manager of Clay. I've known him for years. He was talking about working with I guess he works with the house managers, right? And talking about having to coach them and help them, and you know, because they have the hardest job in any treatment center, as far as I'm concerned, the techs and the house managers. And I was saying to him that and some of you have heard me say this, I apologize, but I had a fabulous supervisor in New York City, and he said 2 things that I carry with me to this day and that I share almost every time I do a presentation. One is, my clients constantly come in and tell me what I need to work on. Right? My issues come up all the time when I'm working with people. And the other one that is my favorite thing he ever said is therapy is about 2 people getting better and one of them getting paid for it. But I have to be willing to do my own work. And I cannot stress that enough. And as somebody who works with the body on a regular basis, if you're working with fear or panic or dissociation on a regular basis, if you're not getting body-based treatment for yourself, please do. I don't care if that's massage, acupuncture, Reiki, craniosacral, yoga, I don't care what it is. But I remember years ago I started dating a guy and he's like, you go to massage twice a month and you get acupuncture twice a month and you do this and then you go to yoga. It's like, God, what a luxury. And after about a month being around me and seeing the kind of work I do, it's like, oh, I get it. It's maintenance for you. And it is. It's absolutely maintenance for me. And when my body talks to me and says, there's something going on here. You know, I had, for about 5 or 6 weeks, I had a pain in my left side, in my fascia area back here. And I went for massage, I went for acupuncture, and after the second massage, it was like, ding, 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 ding. oh, there's something emotional and spiritual going on here. This is not just a physical piece. So if there's a chronic physical thing that's going on, I would invite you to consider that there might be something emotionally and spiritually going on. Or maybe a lesson there for you. Maybe your clients are trying to teach you something. But one of the things that going for body work on a regular basis has really helped me with is that I haven't burned out as a result of it. You know, I give all the time when I work with people, and I need to be nurtured. And I think anybody working in this field, even as a marketer, needs to be nurtured. So do yourself the favor, please. I think that's all I want to share with you for today. I do have handouts. One of these is tools for dealing with panic clients. The other one is a handout on understanding and releasing fear. So what I will say is that a lot of this is based on psychodramatic body work, and if you don't have training in that, please don't go back to your practice and use some of these techniques that you don't know how to do. Come email me or talk to me. There's also a list of grounding techniques here, some of which I've talked about, some of which you've talked about, meditation, body work, all that kind of stuff. And I also have flyers here for upcoming trainings that I'm doing. The calendar of events is there. I think that's all I want to say. Is there anything you want to add, Ashley, before we close? I would do a well of confidentiality, but we've been videotaped, so usually I do. But let me demonstrate one for you, because I think it's a great tool to give people who are running groups. So can I just have like 6 people come up here just to quickly demonstrate? So you don't have to do you don't have to say a word. 1, come on, 2, 3. Okay, that's good enough. So no, you come on. Come. So I'm going to invite you to put your right shoulder in the circle. Yeah, your other right shoulder. Stick your hand out like you're hitchhiking. And then you're going to turn your hand to the left. And you're going to grab the thumb of the person next to you. Right? So you end up having this well here. Can everybody see it? Yes? And then one at a time, each person shouts their name down the well to signify their willingness to honor the contract and confidentiality with each other. So we'll just show you how. Jean.
George.
Jessica. Salisa. Cindy.
Alan.
So please feel free. This is courtesy of a psychodrama trainer named Dorothy Satin. It's been used all over the world as a result of Dorothy training people all over the world. Please feel free to take it back to your practice. It's a wonderful technique because people really take it seriously. Yeah. So, great. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck on your new space. For those of you who want CEUs, the attendance sheet.